Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the March webinar for Kevin Davis Insurance. Today's webinar is Cyber Risk Coverage for Beginners. Happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Sherry Branson, and I'm your host today. I'm now joined by Kevin Davis, the president of Kevin Davis Insurance. Good afternoon, Kevin.
Hey, good afternoon. How you doing, Sherry?
Doing great, doing great. Kevin,
That's
it's
good.
March Madness is on TV, St. Patrick's Day. There's a lot going on.
A lot of things going on. A lot of things going on. I'm a little under the weather. I'm not feeling as great as I would like to feel. But you know what? I love this topic right now. It's a lot of excitement, a lot of energy around cyber insurance coverages. So I'm looking.
Yes, yes, yes. I know that a lot of people have spring colds, the change in seasons,
Yeah,
hot
yeah,
and cold. Well, thanks
yeah.
for joining. Thanks for doing this. I know you're not
Hey,
feeling so
I'm
well.
here.
That's great. We're here, whether we're sick or not. We're gonna do a webinar.
Exactly.
I have a little cold too, so we've got two sickies doing a webinar today.
Yes.
And yes, Kevin, we're going to talk about how important this coverage is for community associations. I know everybody who's with us today is in the community association industry, and they're wondering, well, why cyber for community associations?
Well, okay, this is what I want to do today is really talk about the cyber coverage. Everybody understands the importance of cyber and everybody understands what cyber crime is all about. But today we're going to talk about cyber coverage, and I'm divided into two parts. Part one is what we're going to do today is about data breaches, how these things occur, what's a data breach, what kind of coverage is provided for data breaches. Part two is going to focus on theft of funds as related to crime, the cyber part of it. So there's two separate parts of it. Instead of combining them all together and going over so much information, we're going to just do cyber data breach right now, and then part two will be the other types of cyber-related claims.
Okay, great. So we're dividing it up into two parts. And I just wanted to mention that I've been asked over the past month if you attendees could invite property managers and board members, et cetera, your customers to the webinars. Feel free to invite guests to the webinar. It serves as an educational tool for you to show them more information about the coverages and why different coverages are needed, et cetera. So it's a great way for them to learn as well. And Kevin, now I know cyber risk insurance, it's rapidly emerging as a must for businesses both large and small. Do you agree with that?
Okay, and that's the whole point. If you think about it, almost every business out there collects information. It collects information on their clients. It collects information on their vendors, on their employees, their contractors, all this information they collect. Now, if any of the information is lost or stolen, it can create a problem. Now, what creates a problem is that if it's personal identifiable information that is lost or stolen, then action must be taken.
Okay, that makes sense. And I know that the laws kind of vary from state to state, right, Kevin?
Exactly. Right now, we have 47 states that have notice requirements for any kind of data breach. Okay, and we're talking about data breach of personal identifiable information. You can have a data breach of anything else, but personal identifiable information by law. Okay, you have to make certifications.
I see. Okay. So 47 states currently have requirements and have laws. Now, when you say personal identifiable information, that's a long term. Can you tell everybody joining us today what that is?
Sure. When you talk about that kind of information, you're talking about the first name plus a credit card information, social security number, driver's license number, passwords, security ID. When those two pieces of information are together, that's personal identifiable information. Now, if you walk into your management company's office and all of a sudden you see a list of social security numbers on there and you see your number on there, that's not a data breach unless your name is attached to
Okay. So those two pieces have to be together, Kevin.
it.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. And you mentioned data breach a couple of times. Can you define what exactly is a data breach?
Okay, so now all of a sudden it's your job to protect that information, that personal identifiable information that you have on your customers and your clients and all the individuals. All right, a data breach, when somebody acquires that information, an unauthorized person acquires that information, when they acquire it, and then they take that information and either try to sell it or start identity theft. So when they let them use that information in an authorized manner, that is a data breach.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. And I just wanted to mention if anybody has any questions about what we go over today, please send me an email and I can answer your question. I can also send you a copy of today's presentation. And I also have a marketing flyer. I have a specimen policy and I have a cyber risk application. So I can send all of that to you. And my email address is sbranson@kdinslikeInsurance.com. And now, Kevin, everybody joining us today, as I mentioned, is in the community association industry. So why do community associations need cyber insurance?
Okay. When we talk about community association cyber coverage, we're talking about peace of mind coverage for the board of directors and the property manager in an event of a data breach, meaning loss of the data or theft of the funds occur. So it's protect them from that kind of coverage. Because don't forget, the board's responsibility is to protect the information unit owners have, other board members, renters, contractors, you got management company employees, you got vendors. They all have personal identifiable information that the board may have access to. Their job is to protect that. When they don't protect it, then they can be sued, not only by the person who information they didn't protect, but also be sued by the regulatory agencies like the FTC or say the Attorney General's office. So they really need their coverage to protect them outright. Now, let me give you a good example of what our biggest fear is in this industry in terms of for community association. Now, because you live in a condo, right, Sherry, right?
Yes, HOA. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you live in an HOA, and it's tax time. So let's say that have you filed your taxes yet?
No, next week I'll be filing.
Next week. Mm-hmm. Okay, now the problem is, and this has happened already, not to an HOA, but another industry. Let's say you go to file your tax return, and all of a sudden the IRS comes back and says it's already been filed.
I wouldn't be a happy camper, Kevin.
Exactly. Now you go next door. Your next door neighbor says, guess what? Same thing happened to me. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Same thing happened to the person down the street, upstairs. You find out that your whole association tax returns have been filed already. So you realize you've been hacked. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now the problem is that when you are hacked like that, that's how you find out. You either find out by the IRS or somebody finds out that you've been hacked and your whole group that you're part of has been hacked. Now the question is, what do you do about it? If you're a board member, you don't know what to do. That's why you need cyber coverage, because they tell you what to do as soon as that happens.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. Again, if you have any questions about what we went over, please send your questions to me at sbranson@kdins.com. And now, Kevin, speaking of cyber insurance, are there different types of policies out there?
Okay. Now, there is no standard cyber policy. You can get them very, very cheaply as part of their package policy. You can get them as part even of the D&O policy, but it's very, very cheap, and the coverage is very restrictive. It's limited coverage. Now, what we recommend is what we have right now is a standalone cyber insurance policy designed specifically for community association.
Okay, so the other one that you're referring to is more of an endorsement, Kevin.
Yes, it's an endorsement to the policy. Now, you can buy a cyber policy for anybody, any corporation out there, standalone cyber policy with 10 insuring agreements. What we've done is that we've designed the policy for community association, and the limits are about $250,000, $500,000, but for $250,000, the premium is about $500.
Okay, so very reasonable.
Yeah, you got 4 insuring agreements, and coverage extends to the community association property management company.
Oh, okay, so this coverage extends to the property manager. Interesting. Okay, so should managers have their own coverage, though, Kevin?
Yes, and that's the important thing. The management company should have their own coverage. However, most of them don't have it, and the ones that do have it, the adequate limits are inadequate. The limits are very, very low. They may end up with a $1 million limit, and if they manage 30, 40, 60 associations, the limits are not adequate. Mm-hmm. Those are the main things. But the real problem is that we recognize that is a really the relationship between the management company and the board of directors is very, very important. And if there's a claim, we don't want them pointing fingers at each other and saying it's your fault, it's not your fault, who's responsible for the loss. The reality is the ultimate responsibility is the board of directors. We don't want them fighting, so by adding them as additional insured, we kind of solve the problem as who's responsible. Nobody is. It's get it fixed. Let's follow the law. Let's fix the problem as opposed to pointing fingers and saying who's responsible.
hmm So it solves that right off the bat. So it causes them not to be fighting with each other, dividing against each other, to work together to
Yeah,
solve the
and
problem.
that's the main reason. Also, too, the management company has indemnification agreement with the community association, so that as long as they weren't grossly negligent, they will be indemnified by they'll be indemnified. The management company will be indemnified anyway.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's very important. So if you have any questions about that, about the coverage for the how it extends to the property management company, please send an email. And I can also send you a specimen policy, as I mentioned earlier, where you can read more about it. And now, Kevin, with this cyber risk policy, can you explain to everybody what it's all about and give them some details on it?
Okay. The cyber policy can be very complicated because what we're talking about is a policy that combines first-party and third-party coverages. It provides coverage for fines and penalties, which is unheard of. You don't have a policy that provides coverage for fines and penalties. They also have business interruption coverage and extortion coverage and like 4 or 5 crime coverages to the cyber policy. But today, what I want to do is simplify the coverage so that it can be easily understandable to your insured. Because right now, if it's too complicated to even understand it, then nobody's really going to buy the coverage. So what we've done is design a cyber policy where you have 4 insurance agreements, and then we have another policy, which is a crime insurance policy that provides all the other coverages that you need in terms of a cyber loss. Today, we'll talk about the data breach part of it only. We're not going to talk about the other part, but just the theft, the loss of individual data, not authorized for that person to have that information.
hmm Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. And now I know that these data breaches can be very expensive, right, Kevin?
Mm-hmm.
Very expensive.
Yeah, and now what we look at is this is the list, okay, of 8 costs that's involved when you have a data breach. This is an important list because when you try to decide what limits you should have, when you try to decide on what kind of coverage you need, these are the costs that are involved in it. If you have enough limit out there to pay for all these different things, then you have a pretty good policy. Now, so first start from the beginning. And once you determine that a loss has occurred, you need a forensic examination. The forensic exam determines the extent of the breach and the scope of the breach. So you have to determine if it's a breach or not, first of all, or it's just a lost laptop. You know, if
Okay.
it's more than a lost laptop with data in there, then all of a sudden you need a forensic examination to find out how much data is in there, and then once you find out, once the forensic examination is done, then you move to number 2, which is notification of third parties. Okay. Now, once you know who it is, you got to follow the state law. Remember, 47 states tell you exactly what you have to do. So by having a coverage, they'll tell you that you're in California. So this is the law requiring for California for notification. So now you notified everybody. Now, you should set up a call center. A call center with a phone number on the actual letter that goes out, the notification letter, that says that if you want more information, please call this number, and they will give you information about the extent of the breach.
Okay.
Next one is credit or ID monitoring. All right. You should have ID credit monitoring because once that information is out there, somebody may set up an ID theft on you. By having credit monitoring, you get your credit reports every for a full year, at least a year, and you can have that.
That's important. I know that with Anthem being hacked last year, they set up credit monitoring and identity monitoring for me. I set that up through them, and I felt much better after doing that after being hacked.
Exactly, and so that's that. Number 5 is a PR firm. Once you get hacked, you should have a PR firm there to help you out, to bring because your reputation's at stake, to fix the company up, to make sure the company is continuing its success, and not be labeled as a company that can't keep the information secure. So you can have a PR firm. Now, the next couple of them are really important because this is the thing that can be really expensive. Number 1 is the legal defense. You're talking about once you're sued, okay? What kind of defense there are you going to mount? Now, you could be sued because you lost all that information, and you shouldn't have lost it. You could be sued because the information has been lost, and now you have These people have identity theft issues out there, so you have to reimburse them. They also cost to indemnify or reimburse the banks out there. They may have to reissue credit cards and things like that. So the legal defense could be a lot of money there, and that's the one that's. And on top of that, you have regulatory proceedings, fines, and penalties. You know, you have to defend yourself against that, maybe from the Federal Trade Commission or State Attorney General's office, because they can come in and say, guess what? You didn't notify them properly based on our state law. You know, or you didn't have proper security because you said you did. You know, companies out there who specialize in having great security, and all of a sudden they get hacked. And all of a sudden the FTC can come in and say, guess what? You're in violation. And as a result of that violation, not only going to fine you, we want you to put together what's called a comprehensive written information security program. Okay?
What is that, Kevin?
What that is that the regulatory agency, the FTC, can come in and say, guess what? Because you were so egregious, because you didn't have proper security in place, once you put a program together for the next 10 years to make sure that your information that you have is secure. So a written program is to make sure that your information you have is secure and stays secure.
And it doesn't happen again. They don't get hacked again.
Exactly.
They have to have a plan. So these are a lot of items, Kevin. There's 8 items up on the screen. So these expenses can really add up where these breaches cost lots of money.
Exactly.
So this is where a cyber risk policy comes in handy. And now when we talk about cyber risk insurance, Kevin, what are the main coverages that people should be looking at?
Okay, now these are the coverages from what we've put together. You have 2 liability coverage and 2 first-party coverages. Okay, the first liability coverage is called Network and Information Security Liability, and what that is basically pretty simple. You are being sued. You're being sued for the failure to prevent unauthorized access to the data. You're being sued for the failure to provide notification of a data breach where required by law in a timely manner. Okay. That's a situation where a property manager left his laptop in the car and it was stolen. The laptop is not password protected. So as a result, all the information in there, all the data, the person's identifiable information in there was lost. Now, and as a result, the HOA, the Homeowner Association, the property manager, was sued. What was sued for failure to prevent unauthorized access to the data. That is under this section, Network and Information Security Liability.
And many people are using laptops, Kevin, and they're traveling with the laptops, so laptops can easily get lost or stolen.
So again, it's when you are sued, the first insuring agreement. The next insuring agreement is regulatory defense expenses. So now all of a sudden, you have that lost laptop. All right, you didn't notify them properly. Well, the FTC, the State Attorney General can come in there, and guess what they can do? They can fine you. They can fine you $50,000, $100,000 because you didn't comply with the state law. When that happens, this policy will pay fines and penalties. Normally, you don't pay fines and penalties because it's uninsurable. But this policy does pick those kind of fines and penalties out.
So that's a really important point right there. This coverage will cover fines and penalties, and that's very unique. That's a hard thing to find in a policy.
Next one, crisis management event expense. All that is coverage to pick up a PR firm to help you put your organization back to the way it was before.
To save the reputation of the company, Kevin.
Exactly.
And
then finally, security breach, remediation, and notification expense. That is your notification. That is notifying everyone who's involved in an incident. In a community association, you have 100 units. You have to notify the husband and the wife. You may have to notify people who used to live there. People fill applications out. You may have the vendors, the contractors. You have to notify everybody by law. This is the coverage that provides a notification expense.
Thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions about this, please send an email to sbranson@kdins.com, and we're happy to answer your questions.
So we're talking about 4 insurance agreements, okay? That's all we're talking about. The liability, the defense for fines and penalties, the PR firm, and you have notification expense. That's it. Kind of simple.
Very good. Very good. It covers a lot. And I know, Kevin, that we're talking about data breach today, but there's also the old-fashioned paper records, which can be an issue.
And that's really important for community association because what happens is they do not purge their files. Information they have, they'll keep from year in and year out. They get a new management company, guess what they do? They still keep that information. And what happens is that sooner or later we'll have to destroy the information, and they have to understand there's certain ways to destroy that information. If you don't destroy it correctly, you could create a data breach. So this is not just for electronic files that are being stolen. It's paper files also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that people forget about the paper files, but they're still out there, and a lot of associations don't even use computers. So
Yes.
they're still using the old-fashioned paper files.
And
And
paper files can have just applications with name, addresses, social security numbers, and again, in file cabinets. And they're in file cabinets that they've kept for, if you have a building that's 20 years old, they probably have every document that's been there for 20 years and keep it in some file cabinet in some basement somewhere.
or if they're disposing of it and not getting it shredded, if they just throw it out in the trash and then it gets discovered. And there's lots of vulnerabilities with the paper files. hmm
Exactly.
hmm And Kevin, I know there are some additional standard policy coverages available. These are not in our policy, our current cyber risk policy, but what are they? What should people be aware of?
Okay, this is important because there are 10 insurance agreements in most cyber policies. We're giving you 4. There's another 4 you can get when you have the crime insurance policy. So we have crime. So altogether you have 8 of them. But again, we have our cyber policy has the 4. When you add it with our crime, you have 8. What's missing, okay? What's missing is the communication and media liability, okay? And that's coverage for defamation claims for your online publications. So basically, if the board, publishes some kind of private information, customer information on their website, they can be sued. Now, we believe it's covered in the CGL. It should not be covered in the cyber policy, but eventually the CGL may exclude all types of cyber. But right now, we believe the CGL should pick it up. So we did not put that in our policy. It's not covered in our policy. Then you have business interruption and additional expense coverage. Okay, that's reimbursement for lost income or system due to a virus or denial of service.
hmm And I know, Kevin, we were talking last month about that hospital in LA that got hacked, and they were basically shut down. They
Yeah,
were, denial of service. They couldn't access any of their records.
exactly. And denial of service, and what happened is that what happened in the hospital, which is the next insurance agreement, is the extortion coverage. They were extorted out of 10,000, I think it was $10,000 of Bitcoin. Okay, so you have to pay it. Now, let's say they did decide not to pay it, then the business interruption additional expenses would have kicked in. So
hmm
either one of those 2 coverages would have came into play. Now, we're not providing those kind of coverages. We recommend if you are a management company looking for cyber, get those coverages.
hmm
But in a community association, I don't see people, shutting down the whole system, denial of service on the community association, or have to worry about business interruption on the community association. If you believe you need it, then buy a full policy. A full policy costs about $2,000. The policy that we're talking about is about $300-400.
Okay, so much more affordable, much more
Mm-hmm.
reasonable. And you think it addresses the needs of most community associations?
Exactly. Yes,
hmm
yes. Now, the crime coverages that we haven't talked about are your social engineering, fund transfer, computer fraud coverages, and the restoration expenses after a virus attack.
hmm
So, but again, we'll talk about all those coverages next time.
Next month in April. Okay, in part
Exactly.
in part 2. And now, Kevin, I know a lot of people are wondering this. Are there any standard exclusions that we should be concerned about?
Yeah. There are some standard exclusions, but most of those exclusions are in most liability policies or in most policies out there. The key thing you understand is that there are no prior acts coverages under the cyber policy.
Okay.
So the retroactive date is effective the date of the issuing policy. Now, if you have continuous coverage, we can backdate the retroactive date, but most policies, this will be the first time out. So if you buy a policy effective today and 3 months ago, somebody hacked the system, it will not be covered under the policy.
Unless I had a prior cyber policy. Okay.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And I know, Kevin, something really exciting that comes along with purchasing a cyber risk policy is the Traveler's E-Risk Hub. Could you
Yeah.
explain to everybody what that is?
You have access to the Travelers E-Risk Hub, which is a 30-minute consultation with a breach coach.
Okay.
30 minutes, pick up the phone, talk to them, and say, guess what? I think we have a problem, and it's at no additional cost.
Okay. A breach
Okay?
coach. Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. So when that laptop is stolen or lost, and you don't know what to do, you pick up the phone and say, guess what? I have a laptop, lost or stolen. I have no idea what to do next. That's why you need that 30-minute breach coach. That alone is probably worth a couple $100. Um, Again, you can buy a pretty cheap policy for a couple $100. You get some good coverages there.
Hmm.
Also, the ERIS Hub includes cyber-related news stories, tools to help build your system a little better. There's a learning center where you have papers and articles and webinars. So there's a lot of information there from the Travelers ERIS Hub. And there's actually a calculator you can use to estimate potential costs of a data breach event.
Ah, okay. Okay, so there's lots of stuff in the e-risk hub. So you really get a lot for your money.
Yes, yes.
And you get a lot of value for your money, considering the fact that the policies are not that expensive. And now, Kevin, we talked earlier a little bit about the application. I mentioned I have a cyber risk application I can email out to people. Can you discuss the application? Is it difficult, complicated? Is it easy?
Well, you know what? The reality is the application is not difficult at all. Basically, there's 4 questions in there that we need answered. That's all. Even those might be 2 or 3 pages long, but only 4 questions are the ones that are really, really important. Now, the first one involves passwords. Okay? Now, you have a lot of passwords, don't you? We all have lots and lots of
Lots and
passwords.
lots of passwords.
And guess what we make you do? We make you change the passwords periodically. Don't we?
Yes.
But you should anyway, because what happens is that it's easy to find out your password if you don't change it, because most people's password are right there on their Facebook page. Yeah, I go to your Facebook page right now, and your date you were born, the date you were married, your husband's name, your name, and it's always some combination of all that kind of information. You got children, and so most people can do that. So we recommend that you use passphrases for now. Don't even worry about passwords. Passphrases that include alphanumeric and even some symbols or things like that. So if you do that and you say yes to that, that's number 1 question.
Hmm.
Do you have a formal documented procedure in place to update passwords?
Okay.
Okay? And if we say no, then we recommend that you do them. Put together a 1-page document that says that this is what we're going to do.
Hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, now, the next 2, pretty easy. You have firewall, you have antivirus software. You have